This week we will see the other two players in our 4-man Oblivion campaign coming to the fray and playing the Doomed Patrol first prologue mission. This mission consists of 2 players with no kill box. With a special scenario of Moonless Night, all models have their line of sight reduced to 12 inches. Win conditions consist of being the last player with any model on the table, or at the end of the 7th round the player with the most models.
Hello, this is Iron Lich W, and I decided to roll with Cryx for the Oblivion campaign. So starting from my 20-point list, I got Cephalyx Mindslaver and Drudges, along with Cephalyx Overlords.
So I'll be playing Trollbloods in this mission, and not sure really what I was going to be facing against, but I knew it was Cryx. I decided that I'd bring a bunch of guns out of Trolls. So I brought a unit of Raiders, some Pyg Lookouts, and because there's usually incorporeal or something like that involved, I brought a Shaman with me so that I could potentially deal with some magic if that ever was a requirement.
For Cryx turn 1, decided to start by, using the Drudges for what they're there for, screen, run them forward, figure if I get to the center of the board and I can use that structure to my advantage. Hopefully I can hide behind it, maybe use a couple of my sprays through it since I don't require line of sight. And hopefully I can survive, because I expected to go against champions, but now I got guys with AoEs, which kind of concerns me.
So for the Trollbloods turn 1, this mission doesn't really have any reason for me to go forward per se. And the table advantage I have is almost everything I have has Pathfinder in it. So the terrain's not really an issue for me. So I'm just going to advance up, not get within charge range, and prep myself for turn 2 of lobbing bombs, shooting undead, and basically having a time of it. It's just a scenario. I just have to live. That's my only goal, my only objective right now. So there's no reason to just charge headlong and give him the opportunity of getting a top of 2 charge on me.
Cryx turn 2. I'm looking at my opponent's armies. Hopefully he kind of lumps something together, because I want to actually use some influence. Since I was expecting to go against champions, I figured the best way to hurt a champion in base to base is to use influence, because Cryx infantry by itself has a mat that concerns me, especially if it's defense 14. So what I'm thinking is first going to move up the Drudges, move up a few Drudges, try and get him to bring in his guys a few at a time. That way I could kind of attack him one at a time. If I can't line them up for a psychic assault from the Overlords, then I'll just use influence and have them chuck bombs at each other all day long, especially if my opponent decides to clump to any kind of degree. So once I get my Drudges out there, I tried to be cognizant of wanting to use Overlords later in the game, so I want to leave like little firing alleys for the Overlords to move through, because ideally, at least in my case, I'm thinking next turn I'm going to go Overlords first, have them move up into the alleys I'm leaving them, do whatever shenanigans that they want to do, and then use Drudges to go forward once again and get into my opponent's face, block, make them waste attacks on Drudges instead of Overlords or the Overseer for the Drudge unit.
So for Trolls turn 2, again I've got a scenario of no mission is pressuring me to move forward. I don't have a zone I need to go claim or a flag I need to contest. So, I basically, my objective is just to spend another turn outside of any sort of major charge ranges. I don't want to provide an opportunity for his force to charge me next turn and gum everything up. But at the same time, I am going to clean off that kind of front line of Cephalyx. Cephalyx have the recursion, so he can bring them back, but if I can force that line of engagement far enough back, then I provide myself more time to have the Overlords and the leader of the Cephalyx unit to move forward. They're the real targets. They're the ones I want to go to. All these Cephalyx are just chaff in the way of that target. For me, the higher priority, even over the Overlords, is actually the unit leader, because if the unit leader is removed, I have a higher chance of being able to encompass or surround the Cephalyx to the point where they can't do anything, because their command range goes so far down. So I advance one of the trolls up. That kind of lead troll gets advanced up, and that's to counter or push out the distance that Cephalyx hiding behind the tower can charge in. So he's only going to get that one, as opposed to maybe, you know, charging 2 or 3 and shutting 2 or 3 down. And then the rest just toss out bombs to clear off that front shaft. Over on my right hand side, I'm going to keep my Pyg Lookouts to try and shoot off another Cephalyx, and then to kind of keep that right hand zone or right hand side, so that way I get shots coming from both directions, so that no matter which way the Cephalyx themselves go, I have some sort of range that can go in that direction to address it.
For Cryx turn 3, I'm looking at what my opponent is doing, and I'm thinking he's not going to fall into my trap. He's just going to peel off my guys one at a time, so I'm going to have to switch strategy. Figure out if I run or charge, what judges can make it in the combat, who's got to run there. My judges are not going to live too long if they remain getting shot apart. Otherwise, yeah, I gotta close that gap somehow. So now everyone's kind of just pressed forward. I see an opportunity to potentially get another Drudge. And Drudges are terrible at mat, and these Raiders have a above troll defense, so I'm really hoping for good dice in this particular case. So I get all my Drudges up there, run, try and get my opponent's face. But I intentionally want to leave a couple of his models unengaged, that way I have some targets for the Overlords. And I did get off an influence in the previous... Actually, I didn't get it off. I tried to, and I failed miserably, because my opponent was defense buff troll. But on turn 3, hoping for something better in terms of dice. So I managed to actually hit using mat 5 to defense 13. I create a Drudge. Then I have to double check the card to see what the placement rule is, because I don't want them all clustered for an AoE bomb. So I spread them out, and then I check line of sight amongst my opponent's models. At this point, I don't want to commit the Overlords too closely. I figured I'd rather just stay at the 10-inch mark, since line of sight is limited to 10. Use influence and just start checking bombs, his own bombs at him. So I know one Overlord was in range from the previous turn. My opponent didn't move the model that was the target, and I decided not to move my Overlord. But, if you look from my opponent's perspective, I don't know what came over his forces. His guys decided to throw bombs at themselves. That's on them. And luckily, a couple of influences do work, and I do get my opponent to throw bombs at himself. Things I can never do. So I look at this as winning for time being.
So Troll's turn 3. His engagement range was a little bit deeper than I thought it would be, and that was in part due to the Prep for Surgery ability, where when he kills that one troll, which I kind of expected was going to happen, I didn't take into account that his ability of running the model, running the leader up, and then being able to place a model engaging further in, did not keep that into account. But what he has done is he's provided me an avenue in which the Shaman can advance forward and spray, clipping 2 of the Drudges, and then the tip just kind of reaching out and touching the leader itself, because again, he's my true target. He's the one that I want to get killed. So the Shaman advances up, and he's going to cast his magic spray out. I do end up clipping the 2 Drudges, but I do not hit the actual officer itself. The roll was too low for the high defense that they do. Unfortunately, he ends up toughing both of them, so they both lay down, so they're not dead, which actually ends up playing into my favor. My planning is to take a step back and look and realize, well, if they're knocked down, then that must mean they're much easier to hit, and I don't need to directly hit the high defense leader. I can just hit the one that's knocked down and then clip the damage and hope the damage is high enough, because their armor's not really that great, to potentially kill them with a bomb from the Raiders. So I move the Raiders around to try and position myself to maximize the amount, again with the concept of just getting some things tossed out and getting things to die, clipping what I can and removing what I can. Unfortunately, I tossed the first bomb and I got too aggressive. The very, very first one that I tossed was actually supposed to go towards the guy standing next to the Overlord because he was closer. The one that I'm measuring to now was supposed to use the one that I killed just now. So because I got too excited about the scenario and didn't take my time to think about it, I completely screwed up my opportunity of actually tossing that bomb onto the Overlord and killing him, which is a huge issue in the sense of what my goal was for this turn. That Overlord still ends up taking no damage and surviving it. And then I'm just kind of, taking into account what I can do. Try and recover the loss here, or what I perceive as a loss. Take some aim shots with my lookouts, increasing their rat and making it so that I can get some shots off. One of them was in range, 5 inches of range for the one in the back to shoot, and then the other two didn't. Ideally, I probably should have ran one of them a little bit closer so that I could have gotten the aiming bonus for itself, as opposed to the standing aiming bonus, because then he could provide it to the others, but I didn't think about that at the time.
Cryx turn 4. My opponent is, I'd say, doing a reasonably good job of taking out Drudges, or at least doing a good enough job to make me concerned. The Drudge, I'll say recursion mechanic, even though it's not really recursion. You're adding new models instead of bringing them back. It's a little harder for me to use than like Mechanthrals with a Stitch Thrall unit following them. So at this point, I figure I'm losing more Drudges than I can replace. And I'm trying to figure out whether I want to spread all the Drudges out in an effort to engage as many models as possible, or I want to try and double up and create more Drudges. I think while I mull it over, I decided that I'm going to try and create more Drudges, but I'm going to switch it up. Instead of going Drudges first, I'm going to activate the Overlords first. And before those remaining Drudges get committed to the battle, I'm going to try and thin out my opponent's numbers. Or I'm going to try to encourage him to thin out his own numbers. So once I see who's in range for a Psychic Assault and who's in range for Influence, I set up the Overlords appropriately. I start throwing bombs at each other. What I'm looking for specifically in this game, or if I can influence one model, will he get a backstrike bonus or a back arc bonus when he throws his bomb at one of his fellow trolls, which I found a couple. Although I suppose using influence probably isn't the most economical way, because I think one of the other lists I was thinking of has a Siren in it, and Siren with a seduction that happens automatically. It doesn't require a dice roll, especially one that would require near average in terms of hitting. So I think I end up leaving his chieftain, or not chieftain, but shaman on 1 life. And that guy scared me a bit because he's got that spray attack that he demonstrated last turn. And I recognize that I got extremely lucky because I didn't realize until too late that I parked a Drudge right next to the Drudge officer. And when my opponent knocked him down, I was sweating bullets because I now have a dude that's on the ground next to like the most important guy in the unit, and my opponent's got bombs that are AoE 3. One may not kill the officer, but I don't want to chance it. But my opponent made the critical mistake of messing up the order in which he threw his bombs, so the guy that was supposed to try and damage my officer ended up clearing some other Drudge first, and after my opponent went through all his unit activation, realized the error. So I caught a break on that one. I was trying not to repeat that with this turn. So I decided to fan out and engage as many guys as I wanted to, or as many of the guys as I could, even though in the back of my mind I meant to set myself up to create more Drudges. But subconscious took control and I just fanned out my units. So overall, I think that the turn ended up working a little better than I thought. Like, I ended up tying down a little more than I had, so I had a decent number. I had just over half a unit going into the next turn.
Troll's turn 4, I'm looking at a scenario where my last turn didn't turn out as well as I want, and I'm getting completely gummed up here. They're slowly but surely coming back, and I need to get into the true threat of the table. I've got to try and kill that the leader, and I got to get some damage in on those overlords, because honestly, the enslaving them to throw my own bombs or stab my own dudes is probably doing more work than his actually Cephalyx are doing. So I position a marker for where I want to run one of my lookouts to get the 2 overlords in the back within the bonus range for marking target. And then the other ones are probably just going to end up, stabbing away at the drudges that are there. Drudges versus lookout melee is probably on par with each other in skill level, at least. And the lookouts being nearby allows some enhanced shooting at the drudges that are at the near my area of this table. So the positioning is, I have to watch out for stealth. It's one of the things coming into this match is that none of my guns were ever over the 12, so the Moonless Night special rule never really impacted me. However, the fact that his models have stealth does impact me. So set myself up to marker where that 5-inch range is, have this one raider advance forward, and then with the mark target, the hope is that I can get the bomb tossed out onto that overlord high enough in the roll that I can actually do damage to it and kill one of the overlords and reduce the amount of times that I'm basically stabbing myself. And then I position the rest of the raiders to, potentially not throw bombs at the cluster of lookouts, or, not be within melee range of each other or anything like that, should anything else come along. And then toss out the 2 bombs on the lower end. Unfortunately, he does end up toughing all of those bomb tosses, so the toughs, I can't complain about tough. I play trolls, let's face it. And then I toss a bomb for the overlord, and it misses, unfortunately, even with the marked target, and then just ends up drifting away to the point where it doesn't even clip either of the 2 that are there.
For Cryx turn 5, my numerical advantage is starting to really starting to show itself. But one thing that is starting to kill me is that Drudges don't have a mechanic to pick themselves up. So I'm having to pick up half my unit and just walk, because they're generally not in melee range to anything. So that's one thing that's starting to get to me. But throughout the course of my opponent's turn, I noticed that he did give me a pretty good lanes for Psychic Assault instead of using Influence. So I think every member of the Overlord's unit got into a position to where they can tag 2 guys with their sprays, which is pretty good. And so I started with the Overlord unit, and I ended up taking out 4 guys with them, amongst 2 sprays. The third one got off an Influence because he wasn't in range for a spray, or at least not a safe angle, and wasn't in range. And although I hit the guy with Influence, he had no targets. He didn't do much with it. And I really cut my opponent's numbers down significantly. I think I only left them with 3 models at the end of turn 5. And then the Drudges activated, and they moved in with the intent of making more Drudges. I made sure to keep my Overseer protected, because I don't even remember what the command range of a Drudge without the officer is.
So for my Trolls turn 5, I'm completely gummed up. He did a pretty good solid number on me last turn, and the recursion is not in my favor. He's going to keep bringing people back. So I have the Raider back up in the hopes that if he misses, I can toss a bomb on those 2 and just kill 2 of them outright. If I stayed in melee, I might kill 1, but then he's going to kill me next turn, and the recursion just plays it in his favor anyways. Unfortunately, I make the tough roll, and he gets backed up to just about the melee range, and then falls down. And then the lookouts, my hope is that between the 2 of them, the first one kills the the one that's engaged, and then the second lookout can turn around and shoot the other. Unfortunately, I don't pull that off.
Cryx turn 6. At this point, the Overlords are safe, and I'm just flood the opponent with whatever Drudges I have left. The Drudgeon is there to soak up damage, just flood my opponent. And for every model I killed, I think I ended up knocking down my opponent because he had to take a free strike. I'm just going to put more Drudges in play. So I was able to recover a few guys from the unit, a few more guys.
I can't help but feel like Iron Lich is playing with his food. So I back up, I get the strike, and I get knocked down. I was kind of hoping that he'd just kill me so the game would end, but he didn't.
Cryx turn 7. My opponent took a free strike with the last guy. Survived. He lived the free strike, but he got knocked down. So on my turn, just activate Drudges, boom forward, kill the last guy, create a Drudge, and then win on killing all my opponent's models.
So for my afterthoughts, first on the mission, I think the mission's great. I think it's a great opportunity to learn the game. It's a very low point level, and there's nothing really fancy about it. It's just learning the mechanics of the game. So I think for an opportunity of bringing a new person, it's a great entry point of just, this is how the game works in its general mechanics. Some of the flaws or some of the mistakes that I did during it is that I got game 2 confused with game 1. I thought that I couldn't do any ambush or AD, so I ended up deploying on the line. I could have technically deployed further up and then maybe had a turn or two where I could have tossed out some shots, backed up, and then tossed out some shots. I also think that maybe committing to not moving backwards, because it's not something you normally do in a steamroller game. You're usually trying to push forward to get into zones. I should have leverage the fact that I'm using shots and then backed up, because I could have gone all the way back to my end of the table edge and it wouldn't have impacted the game of itself, because I didn't have to be anywhere. I just had to live. And I did not keep that in mind. Some of the other things obviously was like that one activation where I could have tossed the bomb on the knockdown Cephalyx in order to hit the leader. I got too excited in the moment and didn't take the time to think it out and take time to make sure I plan it out. I think from a standpoint of engagement and measuring threat ranges and all that stuff, I was on top, and I'm going to continue that practice. I didn't play a clean game for myself and my plans, and it cost me the game.